first of all, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate you giving up the time. So where I'd love to start this podcast, which is, I wish I could come up with a more like original way to start every conversation I have, but I always start with, what's your journey been? Like, what school to now? Take us through Kevin's life.
Sure. Well, I grew up in North Wales. I went to a local primary school and then a local comprehensive school, which was, to say it was a bit rough would be an understatement. It's a pretty rough school. So really, I went through school. I enjoyed school, but expectations from the school were pretty low. And I was determined. Nobody in my family had ever been to university. I was determined that I would go to university. And so I set my sights on choosing 5 universities, as we were allowed to choose in those days, which would potentially take me with the lowest grades that I felt I would get, because the school had been managing all our expectations down. I always wanted to be a civil engineer. I was completely clear from preschool medical. When I did my preschool medical, I can remember the doctor saying to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up, Sonny?" And I said, "I want to be a man who builds bridges." And he said, "You know what they're called?" And I said, "Yeah, navvies." He said, "No, son, they're called civil engineers." I said, "Well, that's what I want to be." And I never changed. So I set my stall out to work hard at my A-levels, ended up getting very good grades at A-level, went to the University of Bradford, which was one of the less fashionable universities in those days, but it was a great university. And I went there, I did a 4-year civil engineering degree, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed it, met some great people, friends to this day. And I got a very good degree, and the university offered me a scholarship to stay on and study for an MBA, which is pretty unusual. You know, at 21, people typically do MBAs later in their academic or their business career, but they were paying for it. So I said I'd stay, and I did it, and I enjoyed that as well. Then I went out to become a civil engineer, and I worked as an engineer for a few years and thought, actually, this isn't what I want to do. I'm not building wonderful skyscrapers and amazing structures. I'm sticking rainwater gullies in a motorway, and that's not much fun. And I'm living in a caravan with a hole in the roof, and I'm being paid peanuts, and really, I'm not enjoying this. So I thought, what can I do to give myself a broader commercial appeal? And I thought, you know what? I studied accountancy a little bit on the MBA, and I thought accountancy, that would give me a broader brush. So I applied to a chemical company called Dow Corning, who were looking for a plant accountant at that time. It was a manufacturing site. They manufactured silicones. And I applied and I got the job, much to my surprise. On the way home, I bought 2 Teach Yourself Accountancy books at W.H. Smith's. I spent 6 weeks studying how to be an accountant again. And I joined the company. And I was there for 4 years, worked my way up to be senior plant accountant, studying accountancy at night school. I did certified accountancy at night school. And that was fun. And then they wanted to send me to America, and I didn't want to go to America, and it was their fast track. And that was all very flattering, but I didn't want to do that. And actually, I didn't want to spend my life manufacturing silicone fluids either. And in the Sunday Times, Porsche were advertising for a regional business manager, and they wanted somebody who could understand engineering, but also understood accountancy. And so I read the spec, and I thought, you know what, that's me. That is me. So I applied for the job, and after a series of interviews, I got the job, and I joined Porsche. And very excited. They said, you get a company car. And I thought, well, it can't possibly be a Porsche, can it? I'd never had a company car before. I'm not exactly a petrol head. I like cars, but I'm not a fanatic. You couldn't come into my office here and see pictures of cars anywhere. Well, except the one behind me, which I bought for myself.
Just say, except for the one behind.
Yeah, that's a car I bought for myself, so that's different. And I joined Porsche, and I was there for 5 years, working my way up through the ranks, taking on more and more responsibility, watching the business fall to pieces around me, really. Product strategy was poor. Overall strategy was poor. There was a lot of infighting. And the family, it was owned by the family, the Porsche and Piech families, and they finally got fed up of it because it was all really not very clever. The results were very poor. And they fired the board. And they came in and fired the board. And I was invited in to meet them. Now, I'd met them before because I'd been brought in as a guest at the board a number of times to talk about the business and what we were doing to improve the performance. So these people weren't strangers to me, but they were the Porsche and the PX families. These are the people who own the thing. And they started giving me a hard time. And I'd phoned my wife as I walked into the room. I said, listen, I'm going to be home in half an hour. And she said, why? I said, I'm just about to get fired. They fired everybody else. So, and of course, there's the panic. Oh, my goodness, we've got a mortgage. We've got 2 young kids. How are we going to pay for the house? I said, look, we'll survive, but, get ready for it. And I walked in and they started giving me a hard time. And I thought, this is so unfair. I wasn't running the business. I was actually keeping the dealers aligned, encouraged, motivated. And so I just said, listen, before you give me a tough time, I just got to say you should be embarrassed. They said, what? And I said, well, you were running this business. You could see, like I could see, it was going wrong, but it's taken 2 years of dire results for you to make any decision. And I think you could fix this business. Oh, yes. How would you fix it? And actually, I walked in there with my finance colleague and we'd worked on a plan of what we would do, but we couldn't get the board to accept the plan. So we said, okay, here's a plan we developed earlier. And so instead of having a 10-minute exit interview, we stood at the flip chart for 4 hours and explained to the family what we would do with this business if we were them. And they said, okay, thank you very much. Please leave the room. So we went outside and I said to Armin was my finance colleague, he's a German national. I didn't speak any German at that point. And I said, at least we told them. He said, no, they were listening. They were really listening. He said, and the back chat was amongst themselves in German. They were listening. So we sat outside for 10 minutes and then we were invited back in. And they said, right, we've made our decision. You are the new managing director. You are the new finance director. That's the plan. Make it happen. And, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I mean, it's like, me, you want me to run the thing? Yes, please, go away and do it. And to give you an idea of the trouble we were in at that point, we had lost 90% of our sales in the previous 2 years. We were losing 20% on everything we sold. We had 3 years new car inventory, 3 years. We're hiding cars everywhere. Couldn't give them away. And out of 32 brands in the marketplace, in terms of customer satisfaction, we were number 32. So you can't go down from there. Down from there is gone, finished. And that's where we started.
Started at the bottom. I want to go all the way back to the beginning, if I can, of something that you said right when you first started talking, which is about being at school and how it was a rough school and all those things. But the thing that sort of stuck out to me was you saying that they managed your expectations down. How did that make you feel? Because I've never been in that experience, but I've also never had an experience as a child anyway, where I've had teachers until I was much older really encourage me to reach my potential. So I can only imagine what it's like to be discouraged from reaching your potential.
Yeah, I mean, listen, because it's all you don't see it. When you're experiencing it, you don't consider it to be abnormal. There was never any conversation in our school about Oxbridge or, the premium universities. That was never discussed. We had one guy from the school who did go to Oxford University, but that was because his teachers were parents and they were clued in on, just how that all works. I didn't even know what Oxbridge was at that point. Not really. I just knew it wasn't for me. It was, it's for others. But in a way, if I go back to school and I think about sport for a minute, my love was cricket. I played a lot of cricket. And I was playing men's cricket when I was about 13 or 14, playing in local men's teams. And I got banned from playing. This is how the school encouraged me. I was banned from playing cricket at school. So rather than saying, hey, look, we've got this guy, we're going to go out and win stuff, I was a quick bowler. And, I'm 6'3", so I was a big lad. And I was very quick. And so the school rewarded me for being really good at being a quick bowler by banning me from playing cricket because I frightened everybody. So
is that why I was going to say, why do you think they made that decision?
Yeah, because I frightened people. I could bowl at 80 plus miles an hour. And what had happened was through my club side, I then got selected for the county. And then they brought in a professional coach. And professional coach was about a guy called Barry Wood, who'd been England opening batsman, so a serious guy. And he took a bit of a shine to me, and he coached me, and he took me to Lancashire and invited me to come in the nets at Lancashire. So outside school, I was enjoying being successful as a cricketer. And when it came to selecting, I played for the county, as I say, and then they picked up, so I was playing for schools in Wales. So then they picked the North Wales team, and then they picked the Welsh team. And I got selected for North Wales on merit. But then when it came to pick the Welsh team, what was noticeable was that the kids who got invited were the kids from the posh schools. All the public schools got invited to send kids to this trial match. And I thought, this is so unfair. I've played against all these kids. I know I'm a better bowler than most of them. So, okay, I'm going to go. And I turned up to this trial match. I just rocked up with my kit. And nobody from my school, these were just the sports masters from the public schools, all a bit out of my league. And they said, why are you here? I said, well, I play for North Wales, and I think you should let me play in this trial match. And they said, well, you weren't invited. I said, no, I'm here now. So they let me bowl. They let me join in the match. And I still remember I bowled 4 overs, 2 maidens, 2 for 2, which anybody who knows anything about cricket, that's not a bad short spell. And I got picked. So I got selected for the country. Now, I only got selected for the country because I'd had the front to turn up and say, here I am, give us a chance, give us a go. In school, academically, I didn't have that confidence because there just wasn't the atmosphere to allow us to develop. We just weren't encouraged. I had a very good maths teacher. My physics teacher was dreadful. It was teach yourself physics at A level.
Is that a physics thing? I feel like I had a physics teacher who was terrible as well.
Well,
like
the thing is,
miserable human being.
Well, the thing is, I'm an engineer, I'm a scientist, I'm a mathematician, and I love that stuff. But there was no encouragement. So what was it like to have your expectations managed down? I don't know, because I didn't notice it. I do remember that in our mock A levels, they marked me down, and I was working and working and working, and they marked me down for 2 E's and a fail. And I was gutted. I was absolutely, and I could not understand why I would get those marks. And I don't know what they were doing. And then I end up getting really good A-level grades in the final. So I don't know. I think, they just didn't want this kid from effectively a working class background to go on and end up in some fancy university instead of taking pride in it. I don't know.
So where do you think?
But I've never been back. I've never been back.
I mean, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. So where do you think this sort of innate desire to just, as you said, like just rock up and see what happens has come from then?
Well, I think, as we grow up and as we grow older and we see more of the world, and in those days my world was very limited. It was a small village in North Wales, and it's a very small community. Everybody knew everybody. My first car, if I was speeding, my mum was a local hairdresser. She knew about it before I got home because somebody would tell her. So everything was very local. And I just wanted to do something different. I'd seen people who'd grown up in that village and stayed in that village all their lives. And you know what? If that suits them, then that's great. But it wasn't going to suit me. And I knew it wasn't going to suit me. And so I just wanted to get on. And I don't even mean financially. I just wanted to go and see the world. I just want to go and broaden my horizons, get different experiences, whatever it was. But I just wasn't going to settle in that village and be there my whole life.
It's interesting because I had a very different educational experience to you in many respects. I went to private secondary school, private sixth form. And I definitely, as I said, can't relate to the expectations being managed down. I mean, God, like my first secondary school, it was the pressure to achieve all A's and A stars at GCSE was almost too much for some of the kids. It was like, unless you get these grades, then you may as well not be here kind of attitude, which for someone like me was terrible. But I can definitely relate to that desire of feeling like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but feeling like there's more to life than this. Like for me, though, it was more to life than getting grades. It was more to life than, reading books just to remember the information in the books to then recite them. I wanted to know why, Shakespeare wrote The Tempest, and why, the Odyssey was important, and why. And I think, so I can definitely relate when you're saying things about, wanting to see the world and probably do something a bit more significant than in your little bubble, because I definitely felt like I was in this bubble where we were being taught what to think, not how to think. And that was so restrictive as a child. I don't know if you can relate to that.
My school was so different to that. I mean, my strongest memories of my school were the fighting. There was a lot of fighting, both within the school and with the teachers. Teachers used to get a good kicking occasionally. The fires, we had a guy who persisted in setting the school on fire until he got expelled.
Until he got expelled.
Wow. Until he got expelled. Yeah, they gave him a few chances and then he got expelled. But that's my overriding memory of school. Of the classes being just chaos. I mean, seriously, chaos. And that's why my children went through private education, because I'm not putting my kids through what I went through, just not doing it.
Do you think that experience gave you, sorry to interrupt you, to the sort of almost like rocket fuel you needed to get out, like to go and do?
Yeah. My kids have never experienced the kind of life that I lived. And let's be clear, my mum and dad are good people. My dad was the local power station engineer. My mum, as I said, was a hairdresser. They were good people. And they brought us up with strong principles and good discipline. And I remember my dad being dismayed at my mock A-level results because he knew I worked so hard and he was dismayed with me. So it was not only my parents, but there was no alternative. That was the school. You can't, it wasn't the kind of thing that, well, oh, look, that school's like that, but that one over there, that's much better. Everybody in the village went to that school. So we never thought of saying, you know what, it's so rough, we're going somewhere else. But what it did for me was make me think, blow this. I'm not living my life like this. I'm getting up and getting on, whatever that means. I'm going. And so there was that determination, absolute determination, and it's still there today. I still today strive to go on and build and grow and develop people around me, and that's what drives me. I still work stupid hours. Because I don't know why. I was in here at 6:00 this morning. I walked out of this office at 10:15 last night, and I'm just driven to do stuff. Just do. We're not on this earth for very long, so let's do what we can to make it a better place. And it absolutely, people talk about it. Oh, I want to earn this much. It's not about money. For me, it's about the challenge. It's about delivering, improving, building teams, creating something that's worthwhile. That's where I get my kicks. That's why I do the expeditions outside work. You don't get paid for climbing a mountain or rowing an ocean, but boy, is it very satisfying when you've done it.
I'm going to dig into your expedition shortly, because I think it would be rude not to, have you on this podcast and not dig into that. I want to go back to something you said a minute ago, which is you left your office. There's loads of things I want to dig into, but just while we're on the topic, you left your office last night at 10:30 or something. You were back in at 6 a.m. I think there is and I feel like I'm being a traitor to my generation by saying this, but I think there is this inherent sort of reluctance to put in those kind of hours. I think we see founders and CEOs on social media going, don't work too hard, like balance is really important. And I often feel like those people who are preaching the hardest about those types of things are the people that can afford to have a balance, because they've already put in the hard yards, they've already put in the hours, and they're not honest with people about actually what it takes to build, and not just a successful business, but a successful career. Like my business is only 2 years old, but prior to that, I was putting in that effort long before I started my business, because I wanted the best for my career. So what are your thoughts about, you've run some huge businesses, huge teams, some incredibly successful businesses. What are your thoughts about this whole kind of hustle culture narrative and like, don't work too hard because you might burn out, and like that sort of attitude towards everything?
I think there needs to be a balance. I really do not hold myself up as a good example. I am at the extreme end, and I know I am, and I'm not pretending to be otherwise. And I think there does need to be a balance. I didn't work these kind of hours when I had young children. I mean, some people might say I did, but I don't think I did. I didn't work till later. But my kids have grown up and gone away now, so I'm here on my own. I can work as many hours as I want. I think I get a little bit frustrated. The snowflake analogy is a poor one, because I think that gets taken to extreme. That's one extreme, and I'm the other extreme. And I think there is somewhere in the middle that's about right. But honestly, I have yet to see anybody be truly successful without working truly hard. And it takes grit. I mean, look, you're building your own business. You know how tough that is. Well, I've built 15 companies now, and I have yet to find an easy way to do it other than sheer hard work, focus, determination, refusing to give up when it goes wrong. And, I speak at conferences all over the world. People say, come and tell us all about it. You've got 45 minutes. And I speak for 45 minutes. And then at the end, they always say, if you got any bits where it went wrong, I say, yeah, you gave me 45 minutes to talk to you. Give me 45 days and I'll tell you all the bits that went wrong. Because the truth is, because you're building a business, there's an awful lot of 2 steps forward and 1.5 steps back. And then we go again and we go back. And it is sheer hard work to build something of value. And I think that's like anything. You want to be a great pianist. Well, you better practice many, many hours. You want to be a great cricketer. I was playing cricket 6 days a week. You've got to try hard to be really good, because the competition is out there. You're competing with people who are also trying really, really hard. So balance, yes. Try not to burn yourself out. That's really not a clever thing to do. I mean, I could also say this morning I've done 2 hours exercise before I sat down to talk to you, which I did. So I have a gym here at home. I'm very lucky. Built a little gym in a spare room, and I work out here, and I work out every day, and that keeps me sane. But building businesses is hard work, and I have yet to meet anybody, I repeat what I said, who's built a really successful business and not put a lot of hours in, and not, if it's their own company, they're thinking about it 7 days a week. I've yet to meet anybody who doesn't.
Yeah. 24/7. I think that's so true. And I think a lot of people fundamentally misunderstand that bit. Like, I don't switch off ever. I'll be in the shower thinking about stuff, and I have to quickly jump out of the shower and like write notes down, or I have my notebook by my bed just in case I had and it's not to say that that's the right way of doing things, but it just is what happens. And I think when you're that passionate about something and you really believe in something, it's kind of the sacrifice you make in order to make your dreams come true, right? Like, you have a picture behind it says dare to dream. Like, if you have a dream, you need to put a strategy in place in order to achieve that. It's like going to the gym. If you want to look a certain way, you can't just go to the gym a couple of times and then go, oh, I'm give up, it didn't work. You have to go for like a year to see the results, and then when you get the results, continue going, because otherwise you're going to lose them. I don't think Usain Bolt went, I didn't get the time I wanted to get, damn it, I'm just going to give up. Like, he didn't take a break, did he? He kept going until he got the time he needed to get.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. If you want to achieve something that's truly remarkable, then you've got to work hard to do it.
Put remarkable effort in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So going back to, again, like, I'm going to flip flop a lot in this conversation because you've said so much in the initial part of this podcast that I want to dig into. So you started your career as a civil engineer. Where did that come from? I don't think I've ever met anyone that's gone, what did you want to be when you grew up? I wanted to be a civil engineer. So where did that come from?
I really don't know. I mean, my wife makes fun of it because in the old yellow pages, there used to be a section that said boring boreholes, for boring, see civil engineers. So it's a joke in our house is that I'm a boring civil engineer. I haven't actually done civil engineering for a long time now, but it was just a passion. And I will today, if I'm walking down the street or I'm somewhere new, I'll be looking at the buildings and looking at the engineering in the buildings and, wondering about how these things stand up and looking at bridges. So it's still a passion. I just didn't enjoy. I kind of wanted to be responsible for the whole bridge, not for the water drainage at one corner of the street. That wasn't what lit my candle. So I didn't stick around long enough to go up the chain. I mean, I was running a quite a reasonable sized building site. We were building a leisure centre when I was about 23 or 24, and they promoted me very quickly. And then I said, well, there's another job came up, and they called the boss of a site an agent. I said, well, put me as agent. I said, no, not at your age. And I said, well, if I'm good enough, I'm old enough. And they said, no, we don't have agents 23, 24. And that's when I thought, you know what, I'm out of here. Because if you're going to limit me, not by what I can do, but by my age, no, that doesn't work for me. And that's when I stepped out.
That's when you stepped out. I wonder, do you think that sort of mentality of taking a step back and looking at things and understanding how that bridge stays up and like how that system works, to me, when you're saying that, that's very clearly to me like a CEO or an entrepreneur. Like it's kind of taking that step back and looking at all the tiny details that make something work and identifying that crack over there. Is that just superficial, or is that going to be problematic further on? Do you think there are similarities in the two, and potentially that's why you've gone on to be 15 businesses deep now?
Yeah, because what I do with a business is I can see the big picture. A lot of people don't see the big picture. I can see the big picture. What I can't do, because I'm not interested in doing, quite honestly, is seeing the detail. So I make sure I surround myself with people who enjoy the detail, who enjoy the operational improvements, because I don't. I get bored with it. And I know I do. And I'm very honest about it. But what I can do is say, wow, look what we could do here. And that was, I walked away from BMW some years later. So I went from Porsche to BMW. I ran BMW, and then I quit. And people could not believe it. I had the best job in the industry. But actually what had happened was I'd gone off on an expedition, and I'd had 6 weeks up a mountain, and I had a lot of time to think. And I thought, you know what, I don't enjoy this anymore. And actually this internet thingy is going to change the world, and it's going to change the motor industry. Nobody gets it, but I can see it. So I'm going to go and do it. And so I stepped out to do it myself. And it was I can see the picture of how we can change the way that a sector operates, or the way of business, or a new business opportunity. But I know myself, I'm not good at the detail. So repeat the point, I recruit people around me who are very good at the detail.
Which is a skill in itself. My God, like hiring is so hard. You walked away from civil engineering at 23 because you weren't given the opportunity that you thought you wanted or deserved at that age, because of your age. And then you go on to be the managing director of Porsche at 32.
Yeah.
Talk me through that, because that happened in 4 years, right? You went from joining Porsche to being the managing director by 32.
Yeah, it was 4 or 5 years. And what it was, as I said earlier, joining Porsche as a regional business manager, and then getting promoted and taking on more responsibility. And again, it's big picture stuff, seeing that actually the way we do this is just bonkers. We could do this so much better. So I would change stuff. And then very frequently, and I get this from conference delegates now, say to me, yeah, but my boss won't let me. And I say, well, ignore him or her and just do it anyway.
Apologize, don't ask permission.
Yeah, exactly. Because once you start showing the improvement, they're not going to argue. So I kind of make it conspirational. I do, I've got 1,000 people in the audience. I say, don't tell anybody, just go and do it. And so I started changing lumps of the business around me, and frankly, building much better relationships with our dealer network, and actually engaging them as part of our team, which is what they are. They're selling cars on our behalf. And previously, they were held at arm's length and treated as, those rough guys out there. Well, I brought them in and actually made them part of the same team. And so we started to see improvements, but I was still battling away inside a company, as I said, with no product strategy and no overall strategy. And that's what was killing us. So then they asked me to run the whole show, and then I could change everything. Then I had the freedom to change everything, and they kind of let me get on with it. They really did. The family trusted me, and huge respect to the family for letting me do this stuff. Because 4 years later, with the same team of people, I didn't change anybody, put people in different positions, but I didn't bring in, the management all-stars. It was the same team of people. We just did things completely differently. And we went from number 32 to number one in customer satisfaction. And instead of losing 20% on sales, we were making 20% on sales. We were the most profitable car business in the market. And it was the same team of people. And we had a lot of fun doing it. It's really hard work. I mean, there were days, desperate days, where you think, am I doing the right thing here? Is this really going to work? I'd come home and I'd sit with my head in my hands thinking, those decisions I made today are far-reaching, but I believe they're right. Let's see. And, you have to believe in yourself. And if it goes wrong, well, that's an opportunity to learn anyway, because, we learn something from it. So if it goes wrong, let's back up a little bit, adjust it and go again. But we transformed that business. We absolutely transformed that business. And, customer satisfaction was enormous. Profitability was fantastic. We went from having, like I said, 3 years unsold new car inventory to having a 1 year forward order bank. It was just transformational. And it was done with the same team of people. And then BMW knocked on the door. Because Porsche asked me, would I go and run Japan? Would I consider going to America? And I didn't want to do either of those. I didn't. I mean, I enjoy travel, but I don't enjoy cities. So I did not want to be in downtown Tokyo. And I did not want to be in Reno, Nevada, which is where the US business was. And BMW had bought Rover. They'd made some internal changes, and the guy who was running BMW GB at that time moved off to another role. And I knew him well. I mean, we're only 20 miles apart physically, and I knew him well. Good guy. And he said to me, Kev, I've got to find my successor. He said, I wondered whether you'd be interested in talking about the job. And I said to him, his name was Tom Purvis, and I said, Tom, if you told me that the interview was in Munich, head office of BMW, if you told me the interview was in Munich and I had to walk there, I'd ask you for 10 minutes to change my shoes. Does that tell you? And he said, great. So we went through I don't think they interviewed anybody else. We went through this process where I was fast-tracked through this interview process over a few weeks, and they offered me the job. And it's completely different, a totally different scale. Turnover is billions instead of millions. And it's a big challenge because BMW were considered to be, in many ways, the best brand in the market at that point. And that was all very exciting. But when I went there, it was immediately apparent to me that they could be much better. They really could be. And again, comes back to what you said earlier about seeing the big picture and looking at this big picture and realizing they were optimizing where they were thinking, but they weren't thinking differently or big enough. And so they gave me a plan when I joined. Here's the plan. Kev, we love what you did at Porsche, but that was all a bit rocky. And I said, well, it wasn't rocky, really. They said, well, it was rocky. It was lots of change. I said, yeah, lots of change, because there needed to be lots of change. But I said, it was all control. We knew where we were going, sort of. And,
left it a bit out.
Yeah, sort of. And they gave me this plan, which was to grow this business, BMW GB, 4% per annum. And I looked at this plan. I thought, yeah, okay, all right, let's see. And as a few weeks into the job and walking around a lot and talking to a lot of people and meeting a lot of dealers and talking to customers and going out with the guys to meet customers when they broke down, I went out and met people who were in distressed situations, because you really get honesty then. And I thought we could do so much more with this business. And so I started the same process again of thinking big, understanding what the vision of success was. What will it look like when we're successful? What are the key streams and key elements to get us there? And how do I engage these thousands and thousands of people who I'm now leading to follow this plan? Because they all thought they were doing a great job before. Well, they were doing a great job, but they're doing a great job within limitations. And over a period of time, they really bought into what we were talking about. And give you an idea, in 4 years, instead of growing at 4%, we grew that business by 80%, and we grew operating profit by 500%.
Wow.
But more importantly, the customer satisfaction went up and up and up. And, that's your long-term success, is your customer satisfaction. So again, it was 4 years of transformational growth. and a lot of fun doing it. A lot of fun.
There are two things that sort of stick out to me here. One is that you're committed to one company for a period of time, and I think that there is a trend currently where people don't do that. They kind of do 2 years in one place and then move on to the next one. And I understand the trend of doing that because you're kind of gathering skills from different places and being able to optimize and get more money and that kind of stuff. But I do think there is a bit of a life hack and career hack, which is sticking at something long enough to be able to see the kind of fruits of your efforts. And that's one thing that's sticking out. But the other thing that really sticks out to me, particularly as a business owner, a lot of people listening to this are business owners and CEOs and entrepreneurs, is that glaringly, obviously, yeah, you're taking a step back, using your skills to go, yes, we can do better here, we can do better here. But what it seems to me that your best skill is, and the kind of common denominator with Porsche and BMW and potentially all the other businesses you've been working on, is your ability to be able to get people behind that and get people motivated behind the vision that you're looking at and you see for the business. How do you do that? How do you get thousands of people to follow you in a direction when, as you said, they already thought they were doing a good job? I suppose with Porsche it was a little bit different because people know it wasn't going well and they need to try something. But people think they're doing a good job and you're going, actually, I think you can do better. How do you get those people to then sort of U-turn and go up that way instead of that way?
Well, the first thing is it's not necessarily a U-turn. So what we're trying to do is accelerate the kind of journey that people believe they're on anyway. And a key part of that is inviting and involving the team to set the vision. It's not me waking up and coming into the office with a tablet of stone that I've chiseled on. Here's where we're going, guys. It's about getting the team, and it started with a very senior team. You know, my management board at that time was 6 people, and one guy said to me, "I don't believe in this. I don't believe it. I think you're going to ruin the business." And I said to him, "Okay, in that case, how can I help you to go to another company? Because if you don't believe in it, don't stay." But this is the way we're going. So first is be clear that we are going to do something different. So be completely committed to making that change. The second is then connecting people to it. And it starts with the senior team talking about it and inviting people to speak up about what they perceive as the weaknesses. I use a tool I call the whinge wall, and then I have the ideas wall. And the whinge wall is, so which bits of this business really cheese you off? What do you really wish we did differently? And you know, I throw people a challenge and I say, what do you think we could do? And unfortunately, everybody goes down to numbers. Well, I think we could grow at 5% instead of 4%. And when they start that conversation, I turn it around and I say, okay, well, let me flip that back to you. 5%. How would you grow the business at 50%? They look at me saying, no, it's not possible. I said, well, actually it is, because a lot of businesses grow at 50%. How would we do it? No, it's not possible. Okay. So let me make it easy for you. Forget 50%, 500%. They look at me like I'm crazy. I say, come on. If I gave you all the resources you needed, all the people, the money, the tools, technology, what would you do differently in this business to grow it at 500%? And I'm not actually looking for that growth. I'm looking for the ideas of what needs improving. And that's when people say, well, actually, you know what? Our distribution network is really not up to muster. We would need to look at that. And actually, our parts management is pretty poor. And actually. And we start the conversation going there, and they engage in the discussion. And I do this now with other companies. I get invited in to go and help them to revitalize their thinking. And at the end of a couple of days, you know, we've created a series of activities that we're going to do differently to transform this business. And I lead them through a process to do that. And then I just ask them the question. It's the killer question, the simplest question in the world. So we prioritize these things. What's going to make the biggest difference? And then I say to them, which bit of that is not in your control? And they look at it and they say, well, actually, none of it. It's all in our control. So why haven't you done it? Well, it's never been a priority. No, well, it is now. So let's make it a priority and let's focus on those priorities. And because they've identified and defined the priorities, people buy into them. It's not me imposing. It's them realizing the weaknesses and the opportunities which are inherent within their organization. But once they start thinking creatively, you know, it just becomes exciting. They own it. The whinge wall. Let's make sure we've addressed every whinge on that whinge wall. This didn't work. That didn't work. Okay. There's no point whinging about it. You're responsible for it. Let's fix it. And so by going through that process, the senior team get engaged. And then I'll hold another workshop with, I remember at BMW, we did one. I can still see it. Penny Hill Park had probably 40 people in the room, 40, 50 people in the room. And that was the next layer. And they're excited because they're invited to contribute. We're not imposing. We're inviting them on a journey. We're inviting them to come and build something that's extraordinary because they're going to be responsible for it. They want to look back and say, hey, look what we did. We're proud about what we achieved. And you achieved it. It wasn't me. All I did was invite you on the journey, and you came on the journey. And the expedition analogy is the same. I didn't carry you up that mountain. You walked up that mountain. You climbed up that mountain. All I did was say, hey, look at that mountain there. Wouldn't that be fun to get to the top of it? How would we do that? How could we do that? And then people start the process themselves. And of course, you get 40 or 50 people. The head office team at BMW is about 500 people. You get 50 really engaged, and then you invite everybody. And then we have tools we use whereby people can put their ideas and their thoughts and their improvement processes, and they become part of it. And so it's a kind of rolling process. It's not top down. You can't do it. You can't just impose it. It doesn't work.
I agree with that, definitely. Like, obviously my business is tiny, like by comparison, we're only 10 people, but I have exactly the same thought process. Every time we have a quarterly wrap up or a summer wrap up or an end of year wrap up, it's all about like, hey guys, what can we do to improve this business? Like, what are you seeing that's going wrong? And I don't know if you can relate to this, and maybe that's why you have the whinge wall and the, what was the opposite to the whinge wall?
Ideas wall.
The ideas wall. I love that concept. I think it's easier to say to people what pisses you off than what do you think we can improve? Because it's the things that piss you off that we can improve. But I think it's hard for people to say, oh, we can improve this, when actually it's much easier to go, this irritates me.
And it's giving people, when I talk about the 550, 500%, it's giving people the freedom to think. So I'll give you for instance. So I took over a boat company, I don't know, 5 years ago. Boat company was just about to sink. Big boat company, big brand, Fairline, great brand. But it was all wrong, and the finances were all wrong, and it was owned by a bank. It got to the point where the bank owned it. And banks are really, really good at being bankers. They're not really good at running businesses. So they wanted to get rid of it. So they invite me in to go and run this thing. And I had a beautiful desk, wonderful. Everything was beautiful. Everything was just very pretty. And a pile of paper 2 foot high on my desk. And 95% of it was complaining about parts supply, because people would pay these boats. The cheapest boat, least expensive boat, was £750,000. The most expensive was 7 or 8 million quid. So people would pay, pick a number, 5 million for their boat. And then they break something and they place an order, and it takes us 6 or 8 months to deliver this part. And of course they get cheesed off because they want to go out and play on the boat. Of course they do. So I spoke to the parts team and I said, guys, 95% of the complaints here about part. Oh yeah, okay, this is the marine industry and this is what it's like. And I said, well, I don't accept it. I said, well, I just don't accept it. I said, I think we could do much, much better. And they said, well, how much better? I said, well, how about 90% of parts delivery within 24 hours? And they laughed. They actually laughed and they said, you got to be kidding. I said, I'm not kidding at all. I said, because what you need to understand is you're not competing with other boat manufacturers. You're competing for that $5 million for the man or the woman to buy a house in Barbados or a light aircraft or a LaFerrari or a XYZ. They can spend that money on anything. We want to spend it on a boat. And it's really not about the price of the boat. It's about the experience. Price is not a number. Price is an experience. And so we need to change the experience of dealing with Fairline. And they told me I was bonkers, and they told me they couldn't do it. And 8 months later, we were doing it. Of course we could do it. But what we needed to do was to believe it was a priority, because up until then, it wasn't a priority. And we found all kinds of clever ways to do it. And, you start to understand what the real issues are. And a big piece of the real issues is about customs management, of transferring pieces of complex equipment across the world. So what did we do? We went out and found a company who were experts in managing stuff through customs, and we brought 3 of them into our warehouse, and we sat them in the middle of the warehouse, and they took all the problems. So it is a case of realizing that when you identify your priorities, you can actually resolve them. Because I believe people are incredible. I believe people have got the talent to do it if I can create the culture and the framework for them to apply it. And so that's my job. My job is to help them to set the vision of success. And my job is to create the freedom for people to become geniuses. And you become a genius, not by being a genius, but by recognizing that each one of us has got a little bit of genius. And if we form a team, put all our bits together, we've got a complete genius. So let's just do that. And, by doing that, I'm very lucky. I've built great businesses and I've worked with fantastic teams. They did all the work. All I did was set direction.
I think you're incredibly humble. I think you probably did more than just set the direction. Do you believe, though, that almost all problems in business are people problems? Because the things that I'm hearing you say are, people problem, customers aren't happy. People problem, team isn't happy. People problem, limiting beliefs within the leadership team. Like it seems like every problem that every business has ever had is a people problem.
I think I'd turn that around and say, at the minute, everyone's talking about AI. Machine intelligence is going to take over the world. Yeah, maybe, but not for a long time yet, in my humble opinion. I don't think we'll have self-drive cars for a long time yet. That's just my opinion. The point is it all a people problem? Who makes the decisions in business? It's people. So ultimately, it boils back to a person making a decision. So my job as a leader is to make it easy for that person to make the decision that's going to improve the business. People, I don't believe there's anybody who wants to do a bad job. I really don't. I think people want to do a good job. The trouble is they don't know what a good job is because nobody has ever given them the framework and the vision of success for them to say, okay, that's where I'm going. All right. So instead of going this way, I'm going that way. And every time they go that way, say, great job. So it's a people problem only because the leaders haven't created the culture and the framework for people to really apply their skills to apply their knowledge. Innovation is just focused imagination. It's about focusing that imagination. We've all got imagination. That's the beauty of humankind. We are creative beings. We can imagine. Machines can't imagine. Machines just make a decision. But we can imagine. We can sit down and discuss a scenario. We can sit down and explore how this thing could be better. And then we make the decisions that take us there. And that's, in that regard, it's a human process. It's always a human process. Humans make the decisions.
So what would be some tips then? So it's hypothetically, I'm a business owner listening to this, and I've got a team of 50, and I'm listening to everything you're saying, Kevin, and I'm going, yes, this guy gets it. That's what I need in my business. What are some of the sort of, I hate the word hacks because I think hack implies that it's like a quick fix, and I don't think there's a quick fix for anything. But what are some of the things that people can look at practically to make those like marginal gains or like small improvements in their business that do ultimately end up in that 50% extra, that 500% extra?
Yeah. The marginal gains need to be aligned. So everybody can make marginal gains, but if they're not aligned to a clear vision of success, then those marginal gains are all being improved in different directions. And it becomes suboptimal. I can improve, I can reduce my investment in parts tomorrow, for example. That's easy. I'll just reduce the number of parts. And look, I meet my KPIs because my investment in parts is lower. Oh, yeah, but your customer service sucks because you can't get them. So it's all got to be aligned. So the hacks for me, I always break it down to 3 pieces. Number 1 is, what are you committed to? What does success look like? Let's have a clarity of vision about success. Sit down and write it down. And it's not 10% profit or 100 million turnover. That's not success. That's a measure. That's a number. What does success look like? When you're successful, what will your customers see? What will they hear? What will they feel? Define success for you. And for different people, it means different things, but define success for you. and then be absolutely committed to it. Be passionate about it. Because if you're not, don't bother. Because people will see through you. You've got to be absolutely committed to this thing. The second is understand where your business, your organization is now, and be brutal. There's only one version of the truth. And I meet a lot of leaders who don't accept that actually their business is not functioning well. I dealt with a business this week, and I said to him, I've been telling you for 3 years, you're the worst performing business I deal with. I said, that's unfortunate because I'm kind of tied into you for this particular product, but you are the worst performing business that I deal with. And they haven't listened to me. So I cancelled the contract last week, and they went, oh, what's the matter? And I said, well, just go back through the email trail the last 3 years and you'll see what the matter is. So be brave enough to take a realistic view on your own organization. There's only one version of the truth. But then you need to connect where you are to what you commit to. So I call that the connect piece. So here's the commitment. It's where we're going. Here's the connect piece. This is where we are, and that's where we're going. What are the priority steps? Comes down to what I said about dare to dream, about what we could do. And then the third piece is what I call creating magic. And that's when you've got all the team engaged, where everyone's having fun, where they're trying stuff. And you know what? We say thank you because they try stuff. We say, that's great. Let's try something. Let's try it again. Oh, it didn't work. Okay. Why didn't it work? Let's learn from that. Now let's go again. So the hacks are: be clear about where you're going, be clear about where you are, focus on the real priorities that are going to get you there, and don't think that anything is too difficult. If it's too difficult, get rid of it. If it's too difficult, don't do it. But if it's not too difficult, fix it. And then the third piece is make sure the whole team is engaged. There's no such person as an onlyer in business, you know? She's only a sales director. He's only a car cleaner. There's no such person as an onlyer. So make sure everybody in the team understands how they can play a part. And you'll be amazed what you can achieve. We turned that, the Fairline business had made losses for 10 years. 10 years. Big company, 7 factories building big boats, very complex. We got it back in profit in 14 months. What did I do? Nothing. All I did was say to the guys, what do you want to do? And they said, we want to build the best motor yachts in the world. And I said, well, why aren't you? They said, because you want letters. I said, I've been here a week. Give us a chance. But let's talk about what we could do. And we went through exactly the process I've just described. Started with the top team, then we got more people involved, then we got the whole factory involved. And the whinge wall and the ideas wall, well, I can tell you, there were sheets of plywood, because a lot of plywood building boats. There were sheets of plywood on the production lines, and the guys used to write on the sheet of plywood, because that was the tool to hand. Write on that. Right, and then let's deal with it. And we transformed that business, transformed it. So those are the hacks.
What do you do if someone is in a senior leadership position and goes, nah, don't believe? Like you mentioned someone a minute ago that just went, nah, I don't think you can do it. And you just never win them on side. What happens then?
You know what? I used to spend months and years trying to convince them. I really did, because I thought it was a weakness to fire people. No, I don't. Now I'll make sure we have a one-on-one conversation. And it's, the Brian Clough comment. We speak for 20 minutes and then he realizes I was right all along. Well, we'll have a chat and we'll understand whether we really are in a different place. And if we are, then I'll say, fully understand, completely get it. But in that situation, I don't have a place for you in the team. So I'm going to help you go somewhere else. You're not a bad person, but I'm going to help you go somewhere else. And I move people on very quickly.
Do you think it's...
And it sounds brutal. It does sound brutal, but it's not, because if they're not happy, you actually want them to be happy as well.
Absolutely. And I learned that the hard way. And I think most probably early stage businesses or business owners find that out the hard way too. I think you sometimes hold people on too long because you're worried about how they feel or their feelings, or if I can just keep them on a bit longer, we can turn it around. But the reality is, if it's not working for you, it's not working for them. And if it's not working for them, it's also not working for you. So someone has to come to that conclusion sooner rather than later, because ultimately it will impact their career. But more importantly, and probably a bit selfishly, it's going to impact your business and your team. there's someone in the team that's not bought into the wider vision of where you're going, that very quickly becomes toxic.
Yeah, exactly that. It really is the bad apple in the barrel. But I accept that I don't believe people are bad. It's just it's not their dream.
Yeah.
In which case, and I've got people who I've let go who are still friends today, and they went on and did other things, and that's fine. Absolutely fine. I don't imagine them being bad people. It's just this wasn't the right place for them to express their talents, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's interesting that you just said that, actually, because I think certainly the kind of clients and companies that I speak to, people spend so much money on retaining talent, and they should, absolutely. I'm not saying don't, but to your point about, you're still friends with people that you've let go. There's a couple of people that I've let go who still call me being like, Amelia, like, and we still have a lovely conversation. One of them's got X Klowt in their headline because they're so proud to have worked it, even though we let them go. And I sometimes feel like employers spend so much time, energy, and money on retaining talent that they forget that actually there is so much benefit in letting people go and do something else and almost being that Springboks organization, not least because you're not retaining people that aren't necessarily adding to it, but more importantly, from an employer branding perspective, how powerful is it that you've got people that have left, or worse, been fired from a business and still go, that's a great place to work, or like, that's a great person to work for.
Yeah. And it's true. And that's why if I let people go, I try to do it in the most professional, discreet, considered way possible.
Yeah. People don't remember what you did, but they definitely remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
So I want to segue nicely, because I've been staring at your two books sitting behind you for the last hour and a bit. And I want to, obviously, I run a personal branding agency. This is called The Branded Podcast. I want to talk about how you went from, deep in these organizations and turning them around and making everything, in case of Porsche, making a loss to making a profit. How do you go from being that business person to, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to start doing speaking gigs, the importance of my brand on top of the company brand? Because they are two separate things, right? They're two separate things.
Yeah, they are. How do you go from
intentional?
The speaking was originally not intentional. So I had sold the company. I had a bit of time on my hands, and a friend of mine said, Kev, we've been let down at a conference. Do you think you can come and speak? And I was so naive. I mean, look, you're leading businesses, you're used to speaking. So the actual speaking bit never bothers me. But I said, yeah, okay, all right, what do you want? What do you want me to speak on? He said, I'll just come do the BMW story. So I said, okay, I'll do the BMW story. A week later, he calls me and he said, can we have your slides? And I said, my what? Can we have your slides? I said, slides? What are slides? I was tech dunce at that point. So I said, oh, okay, I'll write some slides. So I wrote some terrible bullet point slides, right? Terrible. And then he called me and he said, right, because the first gig is 2 weeks on Thursday, whatever it was. I said, the first gig, a guy called Sandro Forte. First gig. Yeah, didn't I tell you we're doing a tour? No, you didn't, Sandro. Anyway, it got worse because we did a tour with 7 experienced professional speakers. So you got these guys who are at the top of their game and me, right? So the first day is a complete embarrassment for me. I'm just looking terrible with my rubbish slides. And so every night we were on the road for about 10 days. Every night I'd rewrite my presentation a bit and I'd improve it. So it was a wonderful learning experience. The guys were very kind to me and very helpful, and it was great. And I thought, you know what, I quite enjoy this. And one of the guys ran a speaking agency as well as being a speaker, and he booked me. And so the speaking career just took off from there. And now it's great fun. I speak all over the world. And you meet amazing people, and it's just great fun. So I do it in between everything else. In next week, I think I'm supposed to be in New York on one day, come back, speak in London the following day. Then I've got a day off. Then I'm supposed to fly to Manila, and that's how it goes. And I love it. I really enjoy it. You meet fascinating people. You get to see inside other companies. Frequently, that leads to further work and further invitations to get involved with things. So I really enjoy the speaking. But somebody said to me, all that stuff you speak about, you should write a book. And I said, I have no idea how to write a book. And they said, "Oh, we'll introduce you to a publisher." So they introduced me to Wiley, and that was the first book, the Inspired Leadership book. And I didn't know how to write a book. So they said, "Oh, we'll send you a ghostwriter over." So I worked with this guy called Tim Phillips, and he came here. I wrote the skeleton of the book and the chapters, and then he came here and he interviewed me. And basically I talked the chapters and he turned it into text. And I said, "Great." I said, "I'll give you..." And he said, "No, you don't put my name on it." I said, "I'm putting your name on it." No, Kev, you don't. No, I'm a ghostwriter. I'm invisible." I said, "Tim, you're a writer. I'm a leader. They're two different skills. I am giving you the credit because you helped me to write the book." He said, "Oh, nobody does that." I said, "Well, I do. That's what I believe in. We're a team. We've worked together to create this book." And the book was great and it's been very successful. That's lovely. And I enjoyed the process. The second book came about because first book had been in the market for 3 or 4 years. And then we did an expedition. And the expedition took 3 years to put together. And the lesson, it was like building a business. And, our vision of success was to go out and break the world record, to be the fastest rowers across the Atlantic, which was completely mad because we'd never rowed. We didn't know anything about it, but we set off with this vision of success and then the whole process. And we ended up breaking the world record, getting a Guinness Book of Records entry and the whole thing. And so that book was me translating my diary of the row, which is fine, but it's a bit yawny because what do you do today? Well, we rowed. And what do you do tomorrow?
What did you see?
Yeah. What did we see? Lots of water. But it was more about the interactions amongst the team and how we prepared, when things went wrong, because we actually turned the boat over right in the middle of the Atlantic, which when you're in 20-foot swells and you're all swimming and you're trying to get this boat the right way up, and you realize there's nobody going to come and get you, how do you deal with that? So there were some of those adventures in there, but it was more about the lessons that came from it. And the more I went through the process, the more I realized this was like building a business. So there were all these lessons for business owners or even life lessons. You don't want to build a business, but you do want to build a career. And so I wrote that book during lockdown. I just went away, frankly, down to Devon and sat in a room and wrote it and looked at the sea. And that took me a couple of 3 months to write. And that's been great because the fun with that book is a lot of people are reading it and saying how it applies to their situation and how helpful they've found it because they are building a business or they are building a career or they're building a life or whatever it is, that all these lessons are in there. And so I tried to make that one a bit more entertaining. So the book writing comes from that. I love book writing. I've got the next one in my head. I've got to sit down and get on with it. So that's how those two pieces came together.
Do you think it's important for either leadership or C-level or entrepreneur, however you sort of describe yourself, do you think it's important for them to build a personal brand? Because obviously I'm an agency. We're a personal branding agency. So to a degree, I'm biased about these things. But I do really believe that invisible PR is one of the most powerful things that you can have. It's your reputation, right? I want to influence the discussions about me in rooms that I'm not privy to. And so when I'm speaking to founders about the sort of value of personal branding, it's always in that capacity. It's always of, imagine if your name can be mentioned in the rooms that you want it to be mentioned in, and people can be speaking to you about these things. Like to your point, your friend calling you up and saying, "Can you come and do this speaking circuit?" That potentially might not happen had you not had a strong reputation. Do you think there is value in people sort of in strategically scaling up their reputation, if you like?
Oh, absolutely. And I've done it in the last 10 years really by default since I started to speak at conferences, and now I work with a lady who's helping me to develop my personal brand. And we've only been working together a year, but what's clear is that the visibility that she's helped me to achieve, like this, we would never have had this conversation. It just helps in every way possible because people are aware of me, they're aware of what I stand for, and they can make a judgment. Either I fit with their idea of somebody they'd like to work with, or I don't. They might think my ideas are completely different to theirs, but they get to know me a little bit. And look, we spoke before we started this podcast. You said, "Is there anything I can't ask you?" And I said, "No," because I am what you see. I don't have a secret history. I don't have a secret background. I'm a working class lad who's pulled himself up by his bootstraps and done okay. And that's who I am. And I want to help other people to do more than okay. And I've been very, very fortunate to work with some great brands and some great people. But go back to where we started this conversation, I work 15, 16 hours a day to make that happen. And I still do. And, I'm in my 60s. I'm not a young man anymore, but I'm still working hard and enjoying it. When I don't enjoy it, I'll stop doing it. But it's the personal branding is critical, because in order for me to speak without name dropping, I've just been booked to speak for Google, to their leadership team. I worked with Coca-Cola a few weeks ago. So I'm fortunate now I get to speak with and to some of the world's leading brands. And that's just great fun. And it's, for me, I go there and I speak, but I learn from them as well, because you're in the room with super smart people. And, you've got to really be on your mettle because they're smart. So it's very inspiring. It really is. It allows you to learn and continuously grow and develop as a person. And it's the branding, it's the making me visible to the market that creates those opportunities. So yeah, I think it's hugely important.
You said something a minute ago about your authentic self. I hate that word authentic, but I don't really know how else to. It's like the most marketing buzzword ever. Like, what does it even mean? But being you scalably, like online, etc., allows you to work with people that you want to work with and sort of repel, if you like, the people that you don't want to work with. I think that's a really undervalued piece of personal branding, is that people go, what if people don't like me? And I'm like, that's great, congratulations, you've just worked out who you don't want to work with. Like, you're repelling the people that you don't and attracting the people that you do. And I think when people sort of wrap their heads around that, both from an employer brand perspective, or a lead generation perspective, or an opportunity generation perspective, it becomes really exciting that you're then doing things, like you said, that you love to do, because that's what you're attracting into your ecosystem.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. I mean, I've reached a point in my life where I don't want to work with people I don't want to work with. That's the truth of it. Don't waste your time with people who waste your time.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people out there who want to waste my time. I mean, I get so many invitations to go and give free consultancy to so many companies.
Pick your brains.
Yeah. Can you just give us a few hours? Yeah. No, I don't have a few hours to give to you. So I want to work with people who are serious about what they want to achieve. And if you're serious about it, then you'll invest in it. That investment might be time, it might be effort. But if you want an expert to come in and work with you, sorry, but that's how I make my living. You got to pay me to do that, because that's what I am going to bring enormous value to your company. And you might think I'm expensive. Well, I'll tell you what, see the results in 12 months and tell me if I'm expensive then.
I love that.
Because I'm not.
What advice would you give to someone who's listening to this, like, and they've had because I would say, comparatively to me, you've had a very corporate career. So I've worked with lots of little small businesses. The biggest business I've worked for had a couple of hundred employees, so not huge. And now I work with big corporates, so FTSE 150s, Fortune 100s. And a lot of the sort of reluctance I come up against is people going, oh no, we can't do that. We can't be visible as we can't be individualistic as part of the sort of wider sense of this business. Would you A, convince someone if they had that argument, and B, what would your advice be to those people who think that actually it's not a good idea to be an individual within a large business?
I think there's a matter of degree. So people who know me know I speak about not conference speak. No, I talk about individuals and team. And I said previously, when we were going through the shenanigans with the Prime Minister and the new Prime Minister and the next new Prime Minister, I spoke about Rishi, and I said, I do have a problem with somebody who's effectively the finance director, when he was the finance director, who puts out policies and signs them off Rishi Sunak. I have a problem with that. I'm sorry. Either we're a team, in which case it goes out in the team's name or in the company name, or, in his case, the Conservatives, or you're not a team. And you can't have individuals. You can't have somebody in a team putting out a team policy and branding it themselves. That doesn't fly for me. I always said to my guys when we're in a, and by the way, when I say guys, I include ladies, because one of the
I'm
weaknesses.
Australian. I say guys as well. I always have to
Yeah,
check.
well,
Like,
one of
come
the
on,
weaknesses. Yeah,
guys.
come on, guys. One of the weaknesses I find in the businesses I tend to join is we're too many men. That's one of the first weaknesses, and so I've quite a lot of experience of changing that. But you can't have a team unless you're prepared to be open with each other. So I always say to my team, come on, guys, everything on the table in this room. Let's bash it out. There's no personal feelings here. Let's bash it out. And we'll reach a conclusion. When we reach that conclusion, that's it. We walk out of that door, everyone sticks with that. That is the line. You can't have somebody who then goes out and publishes it as their line unless it's kind of agreed that it's a financial thing. So I have a problem when people are trying to pull themselves out of a team in that way. However, if as part of that team, that person is also something else, they're also doing something else, which doesn't directly impact on the company, they're also a speaker, they're a good speaker, I don't have a problem with that. So it's a kind of subtle difference, but when you're in the team, you're in the team. And when I was at Fairline, so for instance, when I was at Fairline, we were doing a big turnaround, and we were attracting quite a lot of attention, which was great. And some companies wanted to come in and see how we were doing it. So they came in and I charged them my speaking fee. And they paid the speaking fee, but I didn't take it. I put it into the pot in the company, and we used that money to pay for a big staff party and barbecue at the end of the summer. Because what I'm doing in Fairline, I'm doing in Fairline. I can't then take personal benefit, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I do the same thing.
But if you want me to come and speak to your business as Kevin Gaskell, then I'll charge you as Kevin Gaskell. That's a different thing altogether. So I kind of see both sides of it. But I think it's important. It came back to the piece you said about congratulations. You just worked out what you stand for. I think that's critically important. And I think it's good for the senior execs in a business to know what they stand for. I don't think, here you go, if I was still running a corporate like BMW, would I engage a branding agency such as you, a support agency? I probably wouldn't. I would feel that's promoting myself too far. When it's my own business, that's a completely different thing, because I am the business. If I'm the majority shareholder, I am the business. And the market needs to know what I stand for. And I want the market to know what I stand for. And I want the market to understand why we're special. So in that situation, I would do it.
It is interesting. I do think that there is a fear element, even not just with senior leadership, but with employees as well, of senior leaders being concerned about employees having personal brands and opinions online, etc., for fear of it damaging the company brand. But I always say back to them, like, if you're worried about what your people are going to say online, you don't have a problem with what they're going to say online. You have a problem with your people, because if you've not hired them for your values and you've not, vetted them properly, etc., like, you did a bad job hiring, or worse, you're completely micromanaging them to an inch of their life, and therefore stifling all their creativity with the lack of trust. So yeah, I definitely think there's a balance. Obviously I'm an agency, so I'm going to disagree that if you were the head of BMW, you should be building a personal brand, because there's so many benefits to it. I mean, we work with some, as I said, massive companies, normally for employer branding. Like, it's less about the sales. I think when you're at that stage, it's more about, we need to hire 1,000 people this year. How the hell are we going to do that using just recruiters? It's a lot easier to position yourself as a good employer when you've got the CEO, the CFO, and the chief sales director out there putting out content, doing speaking gigs, going on podcasts, talking about what they're doing as a business for their employees. That's so much more.
Now, you see, that's a good argument, and I hadn't considered that, and I think that's a very good argument. And in that situation, if that were the objective, then yes, I would follow through on that. It's am I trying to bull me up as, let's say managing director of BMW? Am I trying to bull me up as some industry superstar? No, I'd feel very uncomfortable doing that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people do that are running businesses, and it's kind of getting them on side, like you said, like just then, like, that makes sense. And it quite often is that we need to achieve X, Y, Z with our talent this year. they join because they like the management and the senior leadership team. So how can we scale that? Because it's all good and well a recruiter going, we've got a great leader, but it's a completely different story of you actually seeing that online.
Sure.
Which leads me not so nicely, but we're going to jump straight in anyway, onto what you're doing outside of work. So Atlantic Row, just spoken about tipping your boat over. We need to hear about how you flipped it back the other way, first of all. Because I can only imagine like a bunch of blokes like bobbing around in the middle of the sea with 20-foot swells. But also, you've done the North Pole, the South Pole. Like, where does that thrill-seeking, adrenaline junkie maniacness come from? Because those are some big things you've done there that most people won't do in their lifetime.
Yeah, but the first is I don't see it as adrenaline junkie, and I don't see it as thrill-seeking. I see it as a challenge. So I kind of approach it that way. Look, I told you ages ago that I grew up in North Wales, and we were climbing mountains from the age of 12, thereabouts. One thing that our school did have was a couple of teachers who were keen outdoor activities supporters. So we would go off, and the county had a little cottage in Snowdonia that the schools could hire, and we would go off to this cottage. And so we go climbing. And so I was climbing from an early age, and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger mountains and bigger mountains. And, you end up climbing some of the biggest mountains in the world. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah, it's just great fun. And I was very lucky that my son has picked up that bug. I never forced him. My daughter picked it up for a while whilst it was skiing, but once it required walking up the mountain carrying the skis, she kind of lost interest. But from my son being 12, and we do these things together, and so the adventures just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the pole came about. I don't know. Everest was the one where I wandered off and spent 6 weeks thinking and came back and quit from BMW. So that was sitting up that mountain.
Did you get all the way up to the summit?
No, been back twice, never got to the summit. And I won't go again because there's too many people. I don't like how busy it is. So Matt, my son's called Matt. Matt and I have a smiley phrase when we're climbing mountains, which is people alert. If we see other people, we don't like it. We don't want to see anybody else. We want to climb that mountain. Him and me, we're going to climb that mountain together. So we go to the remote places. So the poles came about because a mate of mine is a guy called Pete Goss, who was a very famous Vendée Globe, round the world sailor. And I sponsored his boat when I was at BMW. And then he said to me, Kev, I'm thinking of going to the North Pole. We were chatting. I said, oh, that'd be interesting. Pete, how are you going to do that? He said, well, he said, I'm thinking of building a land yacht. So we had this conversation about building something that would blow across the ice. And he said, but I've got to walk there first to suss it out. Do you want to come with me? And I said, what's a bit mad? He said, well, you're a bit mad. So come on, let's go. So we decided that was the North Pole. So we went to the North Pole with a guy called Alan Chambers and 3 or 4 other people. And we walked to the North Pole. And it was just great fun. It was just the most wonderful experience. Yeah, it's just marvelous. I mean, you can't describe what walking across the North Pole is like. Everyone expects it to be cold. Yeah, sure. There's a lot of water up there. It's frozen ice, only frozen ice. And it was just a marvelous experience. So we did that. And Matt, my son, would have been about 15 or 16 at the time. He did not come. He's too young. And then a couple of years later, we were sitting over dinner one day, and I said, the North Pole thing? I said, well, kind of thinking the South Pole now. And the first thing Matt said was, well, you're not going without me this time. Okay. And so we put the South Pole together, and we trekked to the South Pole. And then we went back to the North Pole a few years after that because he hadn't been to the North Pole. So we walked back to the North Pole. So he's done both. And I'm lucky I've done the North Pole twice. So it comes from it being a challenge, it being wow. And the Atlantic Row came about because I was backstage at a conference with a mate of mine, a guy called Peter Van Ketz, who's a South African professional adventurer. And he'd just rowed the Atlantic. And I said, you're mad. He said, Kev, you'd love it. I said, Pete, I don't know anything about rowing, don't know anything about ocean navigation. He said, Kev, you'd love it. And I went away and thought about it. And I was thinking. And then somebody tripped me up at a conference and said, because I used some pictures from the adventures to describe business situations.
Like your book.
Yeah, like the book. So I've got a photograph of Matt hanging off a rope with, 1,000-meter drop underneath him. And I talk about trust and honesty. And I say, the answer, is that rope secure? The answer is either yes or no. It's not maybe. And in business, yes or no, it's not maybe. And so I use some of the adventure analogies to make the points in business. And somebody said to me, what's your next adventure? And I'd literally been thinking about this one with Peter Van Ketz. And I said, well, I quite fancy rowing the Atlantic. Anybody want to come? And I hadn't really thought about it at all. Anybody want to come? And everyone laughed and it was forgotten about. And then one guy came up to me and said, I'll come with you. And it kind of went from there, and it built and built. And the story's in the book. The book's called Catching Giants. And that's when we set the vision of success as breaking the world record. And everyone said to us, you're mad. You're mad. There's Olympic oarsmen have rowed that Atlantic. And we said, yeah, we know that. So we've got to find a way to be better than them, because we can't outrow them, but we can outplan them, we can outthink them, we can outoperate them. And that's what we did. And that's how we broke the world record. So the next one, we just last week we were looking at the new boat. We're going to row the Pacific.
Nice.
So guess what the success is? The success will be breaking the world record. Oh my goodness. So there we are. June.
When does that start?
June the 12th, 2024, we will hit the water.
Oh, wow.
So we've got 18 months, get ourselves prepared. And as people say, when are you going to start training? Guys, I never stop training. I train all the time. You get to my age, if you let it go, you'll never get it back. So we're training now. We'll be in the water. The boat's nearly finished. We'll be in the water in February. And we'll be training. So if you see me wandering around in a little boat in the Solent in spring next year,
you know why?
Give us a wave.
We said when we were speaking prior to this conversation on the phone, and I said we were talking about the expeditions you've done and the adventures that you've been on, and I said something along the lines of, do you think you do all these things because the thrill of like building a business is almost like not enough anymore? Like you have to keep pushing the challenge, keep pushing the challenge, keep pushing the challenge. And I know you said you're not a thrill seeker and adrenaline junkie, but there is part of me that looks at what you've achieved in your career and now looks at these adventures that you're going on and goes, actually, that's someone who's constantly pushing the ceiling of how far they can push themselves. And like, is that not the definition of a career thrill seeker?
Maybe that. Honestly, the best thrill that I can remember is both my kids. They're in their 30s, early 30s now, and both of them were very good free fall skydivers. Amazing. So that was their thing. And I hate heights. I'm scared of heights. I climb mountains, but I don't look down. So I really don't I'm not good on heights.
There's a good euphemism there for business. Like don't look down. Just
never look down. Never look down. So we climb all these crazy mountains and we hang off ropes, but don't look down. And the kid said to me, come on, Kev, you should come skydiving. I said, kids, forget it. I said, no, come on. So we went to Spain to a 10-day intensive skydiving course for me. They were just jumping out the plane. They're all qualified, hundreds of jumps. And they thought it was just great fun to get me up. And the first jump, I still remember, I was sitting shaking in this airport at 13,500 feet. And my son's sitting by the door, all casual. And and the plane slows down, the engine. So you're now going very slowly. So you're going out. And Matt just rolls up this roller door, and he leans across to me, and I'm sitting there, white-faced. And he says, hey, Kev, what's the worst that can happen? And he just rolls out the plane. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I've just watched my son kill himself. No, of course I haven't. He's done this hundreds of times. And then I had to go out after him. For the first 2 days, I was terrified. By day 3 and 4, I'm enjoying it. By day 5 onwards, it's just the greatest fun. Jumping out of a plane, 13,500 feet, free falling, is just wonderful. So if you've never done it, do it. It's great fun. That's a thrill. Yeah. That's a thrill. Yeah. Slogging your guts up a mountain, or, 2 a.m. because the ocean row, you never stop rowing. It's 24/7 rowing, and there's nobody around you. And so you only ever get an hour's sleep. By the time you've eaten and washed and fettled the boat and stuff, you get an hour's sleep, then you're back on the oars. So when you come in on the oars at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's cold and it's raining, that's not a thrill. It's not a thrill. That's just hard work. But yeah, we turned the boat over. We got hit on the stern by a big wave, which picked the stern up. And then as we were way up in the sky, got hit on the side, which just flipped the boat over, and we were just thrown out, absolutely thrown out. And
that must have been a scary moment because, as you said earlier, no one can come and save you at that point.
Yeah, nobody's going to come and get you. I met Tim Peake, the astronaut, on a flight recently, and we were chatting. And I said to him, I was disappointed. And he said, what? I said, well, you were flying over us. I said, we could see you going over. We were waving to you. We couldn't see you waving back. And the reality is that they're 250 miles up in the sky, and they're the closest people in the universe to us. They're the closest people. So nobody's going to come and get you. And we got thrown over. We're tethered to the boat. We're on a line, but you're still thrown out of the boat. And I was underwater looking up. I remember looking up and I could see the row deck because the boat was upside down. I could see the row deck. The boat's supposed to right itself, but it didn't. And I looked to my left. I was rowing with Matt and a guy called Sam at the time. I looked to my left, and there's my son Matt swimming up. So I thought, okay, so he's okay. He's swimming. Couldn't see Sam. Where's Sam? Where's Sam? Can't see Sam. Can't see Sam. So we get up, pop out of the water, and Sam had already kind of clambered onto the hull of the boat, and I was trying to get the boat to right itself by hanging on the lines on the side and using his body weight to try and eventually it rotated and went up. But you still got to get in it. Anybody who's ever been in the water trying to get into a boat when it's going up and down by 10 or 15 feet, it's not an easy thing to do. And of course, the two lads who were asleep, one in each cabin at the end, they're in there sealed in a little window, and they're looking at this little window because their world's just turned upside down. They're wondering what's going on. And, eventually we got the boat the right way up, and we got back on it, and we laughed, and we started rowing again. And that's it. Because you can't get upset about it. You just laugh at it. We're fine. We're alive. Okay, let's go.
I love that attitude so much. It's nowhere near as dramatic as that, unfortunately, but it's something I always say to my team is like, if something goes wrong, I always go, well, no one died, did they? And they go, no. We're like, right. So we're okay.
No one died.
Yeah.
But, a thing like the Atlantic Row and certainly the polar expeditions, you do have a plan in case somebody does die. You have to have a plan, because what are you going to do with the body? And, we have plans of what we're going to do with the body if somebody dies. So, but we don't think about that. You really don't. You're engaged in the now. You're engaged in making that boat go as fast as you can, or walking another mile in minus. Our coldest day at the South Pole was minus 60. So
Celsius.
Yeah.
Wow. So
you just walk another mile, and then another mile, and then another mile. You just keep walking, and eventually you get there.
That's a story of life, surely.
It is a story of life. Wow. Absolutely.
I love that. So aside from rowing the Pacific in 2024, what's next?
Well, my next project is called Smarter Britain. And this is a business I'm building with Matt, my son. And it's about helping young entrepreneurs to get going. And this comes about because, go right back to our conversation about school. Nobody ever helped me to get going. And I see kids these days who don't have a job, or potentially don't want a job, or don't have qualifications for a job. And I go and speak at a lot of schools now. And I say to them, well, then employ yourself. And they say, well, we'd like to, but we don't know how. So Smarter Britain, smarterbritain.co.uk. At the minute, we've just got a holding website there, but it will become a complete platform to help anybody who wants to start a business, or might think they want to start a business or work for themselves, to get going and to get over the initial fear of the paperwork or the registration or keeping accounts or whatever it is, right through to somebody who wants to go and raise some money from investors. And it's all there and it's free. And it's a model that I was part of in South Africa, where I worked with some other people who had this idea for township entrepreneurs. These are subsistence entrepreneurs. Now, these are people who need 25 quid to get going. And there was 3 ladies who created this enterprise in South Africa. It's called The Angels Inc.co.za. And they've done amazing things. They've transformed lives. They've trained now 15,000 or more, I've lost count, 15,000 entrepreneurs. And each one of those entrepreneurs goes on and creates something of value. And that value trickles through the community. So that economic benefit trickles through the community. So they're transforming lives. And I thought, well, we can bring that model over here. It'll be slightly different, but that's what we're building. So that's kind of my legacy project. So when currently I've got 5 companies, and when I eventually remove myself from those one way or another, and they go off, and those companies go off and grow to be wonderful organizations, I will focus on writing books, speaking, and helping young people to build their own businesses.
I love that. And what was it? smarterbritain.co.uk. When's that going to launch? When can people?
Well, the website's there now. You can go and register on it now and have a quick shifty around, but it's going to become a whole platform. And when we finish this conversation today, I've got the rest of the day working on the tech spec for the platform. So it's live now. You ask me when, probably Easter summer next year. It will be all singing, all dancing.
That's incredible. I think there's a lot of platforms that are probably a similar concept to that, but everyone charges. So I think that's incredible that you're giving that information for free. Because I mean, as a business owner myself, 90% of what I've learned is either on the job or on YouTube. So I would have been very grateful for something like that when I was first starting out. To wrap this up nicely, there are so many more things that I want to ask you, but we don't have all the time in the world, and you've got mountains to climb and platforms to build. The final question I have for you, which is the same question I ask every single guest that comes on this podcast, which is, if you could go back to 21-year-old self, or your 21-year-old self, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give yourself, or 3 things you wish you'd known?
Well, the first thing is to have confidence in myself, because at that stage I had no confidence that I could go out and do what I knew I wanted to do. And I was very timid about it. And it took me till I was 25, 26, 27 to start believing in myself. That's the first thing. Have confidence in yourself. The second thing is to expect the knockbacks. And everybody says this, I pitched my book 53 times and it doesn't matter. Just keep pitching. You will get there. That's the second thing. And the third thing is have fun. Just have fun. Make sure you save time in your life for fun. And for me, my expeditions are my fun. I go away usually anywhere between 3 and 7 or 8 weeks. So I go for a long time, but I have fun. And my definition of fun isn't everyone else's definition of fun, but whatever it is for you, have fun. Keep time in your life to have fun. We're on this earth a very short time. Enjoy it. Make sure you enjoy it.
I love that. That's such great advice. And thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate the time. And there's been so many little snippets from this chat that I think people can take a huge amount of value from. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation.
If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and subscribe to hear when the next episode comes out. And if you thought any of this information was valuable, if you thought this episode was good, please do share it with someone that you think would get some benefit from it. And I will see you next week on Branded by Amelia Sordell.